On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. Information warfare is real, and what it really is one side is pushing one set of information, and that's predominantly it. You've got all the mainstream media, all the newspapers, all the periodicals pretty much pushing one direction. Orange man bad, Trump is a liar, everything under the sun. But the reality of things is vastly different. And this is where they're actually losing the information warfare. I think most people are starting to question the news, which is brilliant. And I think a lot of people are starting to look to some of these alternative media sources as places to look for information, to maybe glean a little bit more truth into what is actually going on in the world, not what we're being told is going on in the world. So a lot of things you'd make it sound like Trump is the worst man in the world, nobody supports him, the polls suggest as much, and blah, 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 blah. But the reality seems to speak a different story. And I've got a lot of news to share with you. Not a lot, a decent amount of news to share with you. And I've also got the newest Q posts, and we're going to put those kind of right in the middle. And then I've got some cool news to follow up with at the end as well. Now, to start it all off, we've got a really awesome show of support down in Florida. The Cuban Americans are just an amazing bunch, a very patriotic bunch, and they come from Cuba, which, by the way, is communist, good old Castro Cuba. That's why a lot of them came here. Now, they've legally come here, and I'll tell you what, something that's really interesting about people that legally immigrate to this country, go through the hoops the way you're supposed to. My girlfriend's one of them. They have a very different understanding or belief as far as just anybody being allowed to come to this country. They don't think so. People that have legally come here and done it the right way don't want people skipping line, and they are not happy about it. So believe it or not, a lot of our, quote, immigrants, which do make America great, the immigrants that came here legally and truly consider themselves Americans are probably some of the most patriotic members of this country that we have. And a great example of what's going on down in Florida, I almost said Cuba land, but down in Florida, we've got quite a bit of crazy people supporting Trump. Look at this. There's gobs of people, gobs of Trump supporters. And when I've got a little video we're going to play here in a second where you can hear the music. This is all like Cuban music. It's got that cool Spanish flow. I love that sound too, by the way. But look at all these people. There are thousands of people. In fact, this lady here, Policía estima en 30 mil vehículos, which means 30,000 vehicles. 30,000 vehicles. That's insane. How many vehicles are potentially down there? Let's check out this little bit of video. It's pretty cool. Look at all that. That is awesome. Look at all that. That is incredible. Incredible how much stuff we've got going on out there, right? So this is the reality of things. The news will tell you nobody's supporting Trump. He's way down in the polls. Everybody hates him. He's a liar. He's orange man bad. No, I disagree. There's thousands just down here in Florida. Again, a very important state. A lot of electoral votes come out of Florida. So we've got a huge support for Trump down in Florida. Got another great little piece here where Biden's essentially telling us how he feels about us, the voter, knowing his plans. And essentially, he doesn't want us to know his plans. Let's check this out.
I got to ask you about packing the courts, and I know that you said yesterday you aren't going to answer the question until after the election. But this is the number one thing that I've been asked about from viewers in the past couple of days.
Well, you've been asked by the viewers who are probably Republicans who don't want me continuing to talk about what they're doing to the court right now.
Well, sir, don't the voters deserve to know where you stand?
No, they don't. I'm not going to play his game. He'd love me to talk about, and I've already said something on court pack. He'd love that to be the discussion instead of what he's doing now. He's about to make a pick in the middle of an election. First time it's ever been done. First time in history it's ever been done, number one. Number two, and it's going to go in and he's going to rip away health insurance. The health insurance, 20 million people will lose their health insurance. Over 100 million people will lose their coverage for pre-existing conditions.
Okay, so just right off the bat, 100 million people are going to lose their preconditioned health care. Okay, that's a made-up number. made up. He's allowed to say whatever he wants. No one ever calls him on it at all. Secondly, in the middle of an election, it's kind of a funny way that he tries to look at the way it is. Since they tried to start early voting with the mail-in ballots, he somehow feels that President Trump's not really the president anymore. Hey, and guess what? Even if President Trump loses the election, Joe, he's still the president until January. Guess what? You're not. So again, the things that can be said by him and not get called out by his media. Again, this is why so many of us call this information warfare. Now, again, he's trying to spin this into his direction. He's saying that Trump is packing the courts right now. Packing the courts means adding additional people. Having Supreme Court seats open up and filling them, that is called normal. That is the president's right. That is constitutionally what he's allowed to do and what he's supposed to do. Now, again, they keep referring back to Obama and how he didn't pick anybody during his lame duck year when he had a seat open up. And the reason Obama didn't pick anyone is because he didn't control the Senate. He wouldn't have gotten the vote to pass. And basically the Senate said, yeah, we're not going to pass it. Let's wait until the next president comes in. Let's see who this is, because you're on your last year anyways. So it wasn't that Obama was being some good guy and not doing it. He didn't have the votes, so he couldn't do it. It wasn't that he didn't want to. He wanted to. He just couldn't. So there's a big difference in the way that they're spinning these stories. And again, Joe Biden apparently can say whatever he wants, and no one's ever going to call him out on it. I don't know. I think it's kind of jacked up. Also, people some calling out a little 25th Amendment craziness that Pelosi was talking about. Now, again, was there a plan that Trump was supposed to be sicker than he was, and then he turned out not being so sick? Probably. Did Pelosi think she could literally get away with this? Probably. But the way it played out, she couldn't. And what they're calling her out on big time is that for this to work, so Speaker Pelosi introduces the legislation, yada, yada, but then we get down here with Jenna Ellis. These are the words that Pelosi should have highlighted in Amendment 25, Section 4. Can't take action without the vice president, Nancy. Doesn't matter what your little coup bill says. And that is exactly what is going on. Now, Nancy, when she came out, she said, oh, we're just looking ahead at future presidents, blah, 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 blah. All right, whatever. Either A, she's planning on when Joe Biden gets in there and dies or gets sick or whatever's going to happen, because the guy's not going to last but 4 days after he gets inaugurated. Probably not even that long. Or she's talking about the fact that Trump might very well win again, which is probably going to be the case, and she's going to have to try to figure out another way to get him out of office. Now, there's also the assumption that she's going to win her election, that she's still going to be Speaker of the House. There's a lot of assumptions that are happening here, but again, they're calling it out in a very specific way, and it requires the vice president to be on board with this whole coup thing. And I don't believe Mike Pence is a part of that nonsense. I think he's truly a patriot. Now, something interesting that also came out about Whitmer and her kidnap plotter. Apparently, 3 of the 6 were anti-Trump. 3 of the 6 people that were plotting this kidnapping were BLM supporters. They were part of the anti-Trump group. So, again, they keep wanting to come out, and Whitmore specifically came out and blamed it all on Trump, when the reality is, people don't like you, Whitmer, because you locked down your entire state. You came up with some really crazy rules where gardening's not okay, but you can still go to Home Depot and buy a whole bunch of other things. Like, you had some radical right or left-wing crazy-ass ideas thrown into your bills, and people don't like that. They don't like getting locked down like that, and they don't trust you. So that's, and I'm not saying what happened is okay. It's not. It is never okay to do what happened. It's never okay to plot anything against any of our Congress members. We have ways of handling that. There's peaceful protests. There's votes. There's a lot of things that can happen. This is never okay. Never, never, never. Doesn't matter which side of the fence the bad people are on. It's still bad people. But I wanted to call out the fact that, again, information warfare. She claims that it's all a bunch of right-wing militia conspiracy crazy people, when the reality was it's actually there were some left-wing militia crazy people that were in this group. So again, let's try to get our facts a little straightened out and see how we do after that. Now today, they were talking about this on Fox News, and I had to dig up the article. So Breitbart fortunately had a neat little article talking about how the WHO, the World Health Organization, has done a backflip. Yeah, they've changed their whole idea about lockdowns. They said Lockdowns, bad. Lockdowns equal global poverty. What they have found in the World Health Organization is when countries lock down heavily, those countries pay a huge financial cost. Now, they talk about how lockdowns should be a last-ditch effort. It should be a chance, say your hospitals are being overrun with sick patients, then you lock down to try to slow that down. That's all you're doing is slowing it down. You're not stopping anything, and you're certainly not keeping the sickness at bay. You're slowing the spread for a moment. So that's essentially all you're doing is throwing some freeze spray on it, stopping it for a second, and then it slowly starts to creep back into motion. Ultimately, people need to get sick. They got to work through it. Sweden's a great example of never doing lockdowns. They had their spikes. They had their deaths. Their numbers weren't necessarily good or bad. They were just kind of right in the middle. But ultimately, they've almost got like practically no case, very few cases right now. And I think no deaths related to COVID. So everything is looking significantly better in Sweden. So again, World Health Organization, which again is funny because I don't trust them ever. And here I am quoting them. I get it. It's convenient when it sort of speaks to the narrative. But at the same time, this is also what a lot of people have been saying and getting banned for that matter. But people have been saying this for months. So now it's coming from an official source, and then we can talk about it because that's legally okay. So let's get into some of the Q posts that we've got going on. 4842 is where I left off. They're talking about the survival rate. Now, I spent a gob of time trying to figure out this slide, and I think I finally came to terms with it. And I made it far more complex than it really is. But ultimately, they're talking about your survival rate again. So one thing that they're pointing out with a lot of painful articles, and I'll scroll through them, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all these CDC articles that they link, but total U.S. deaths, all causes. Let's kind of focus on the writing part first. So 2017 total deaths in the U.S. was about 2.8 million, or roughly 234,000 a month. In 2018, the U.S. deaths were 2.83 million versus 2.81 million, so about 237,000 a month, about 3,000 more deaths a month. In 2019, the U.S. deaths were at 2.85, so again, a little bit higher, about 1,000 more per month, so 238,000 per month in 2019. Right now, 2020, total deaths is significantly lower because they're factoring less months. They got less months, right? We're still missing a couple months. So as of the way the numbers are playing out right now, we're looking at about 236,000 per month. So what they did is they essentially assumed that we would maintain that same rough average per month. And using that assumption, again, we're trying to finish off October, November, December. So we're making up numbers to kind of try to finish out what 2020 is going to look like. But certainly probably not bad way to try to approach this problem. But the way they're seeing it is with all of that, with the assumption, with assuming what these next 3 months are going to be, we're sitting at about 2.83 million total for the whole year. So 2.81, 2.83, 2.85, and here we are roughly at 2.83. And what the long skinny of this particular slide is, there doesn't seem to be a large difference in deaths. Same number of people are basically, same number of people are dying per year this year as they did last year, as they did the year before, and as they did the year before that. So there's a big assumption right now that maybe this COVID thing might be causing certain people to die from COVID, that they might have died from pneumonia, from heart attack, from any number of other normal, natural causes. So what they're kind of talking about is what's this percent of total C-19 deaths attributed to nursing homes? Now, this was the part that really got me like a little frustrated at first. And I went through all this, and I'm like, life expectancy, mortality, how long can we live? There is gobs of information, right? And I'm like, all right. And then they do that for 2018. I'm like, there's a lot of information here. And then they get into this whole state, monthly and 12-month ending numbers, live births, blah, blah, blah. One thing that jumped out at me on this was the numbers are very consistent. So your total number of deaths, 258,000, 233, 255, 235, 237. Like they're all in that same general genre. March, we were up to 268, which was kind of early on in the COVID thing, but yeah, whatever, right? But so again, lots of slides, lots of information. There was more stuff we could pull here. I tried to do a little filtering on this particular list. Again, I was like, what the hell is going on? And then I realized, I kind of went back and I reread this, and I'm like, oh, I think he's just trying to point out one really important thing. Death numbers are roughly the same. So the question he asked, why did select Dem governors, so we got, what was it, Pennsylvania, Jersey, New York, California, right? Like Washington State did this. They put their COVID-19 patients that came out of hospitals, they dumped them into nursing homes. They said, nursing homes, you're not allowed to ask if they have COVID. You need to take these people. But if you can't, then don't. But you can't ask if they're sick. So you would never be able to assess whether you can take them or not. So they were kind of forced to take them. And by putting all these sick people, COVID people, into nursing homes with your highest risk, you helped enhance those numbers. So the thought was, who would be most susceptible if you start dumping all these sick people into nursing homes? Well, the old people. So the older people were already highly at risk. I mean, you are with any flu season. And so they kind of had a feeling that, the older people were going to be higher risk. So the same D governors who pushed the COVID-19 infected patients into nursing homes attempted to keep their states closed as well. So on top of trying to probably enhance the death numbers, it's an assumption, but it certainly would have worked. But what might have happened is they might have just kind of gotten people to die that were going to die anyway. Like those people were probably going to die anyway, and maybe it would have been pneumonia, maybe it would have been some other respiratory infection, maybe it would have been a heart failure, heart attack, who knows? But by putting all these COVID people in there, they were probably trying to spike the numbers, but in reality, it doesn't seem that they did. And when we look at the survival rate, you actually find that if you're in that high-risk group, 70-plus age range, you've still got a 94.6% chance of living. Those are good odds. Can you imagine if you had a 94.6% chance of winning the lotto? Do you think you'd go out and play tomorrow? Yeah. And then you'd play the day after that and just win millions after millions after millions. And I don't know, 1 out of 20 times you'd lose. But 19 out of 20 times you'd win. Those are good numbers. Those are great odds. So as it played out, people that were in that high risk actually had a surprisingly strong chance of survival, which kind of backfired, I guess, against the deep state. So they were trying to enhance the numbers, and it doesn't seem to have worked. So that's kind of a victory, I think, in the big question. Now, again, any number of lives lost is horrible. No question about it. But certainly, there were going to be 2.8 million, roughly, people that were going to die this year, even if there wasn't COVID, because that's kind of normal. So as it stands, we're still sitting at about 2.8 million people dying. So nothing really is worse. Nothing's better, but certainly nothing's really worse. Maybe this pandemic doesn't quite have the teeth that so many want to believe it has. And I think Trump has helped us realize that by him walking through the valley of the shadow of death and fearing no evil, because here he is on the other side of it, and he's feeling like $1 million, probably $1 billion, because that's more Trump style. 4843. Got another New York Times post. Now, this one sparked a lot of controversy as well on the Q boards, but it's kind of fun. Don't believe everything you read is what they follow up with here. They're referencing this New York Post article. Mike Pompeo and the Clinton emails could be released before election time. I want to actually discuss or share this particular video because I think it's relevant and I think it talks to the point really well. And then we can discuss it just a hair further here in just a moment. So let's give this a go.
What is the state of this investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails at the State Department?
So, Dana, you'll remember I was close to this even when I was a member of Congress when I served on the Benghazi committee now, what seems like a little bit time ago. We've got the emails. We're getting them out. We're going to get all this information out so the American people can see it. You'll remember there was classified information on a private server. It should have never been there. Hillary Clinton should never have done that. It was unacceptable behavior. It's not the kind of thing that leaders do. They don't put that kind of information out, and you can see whether it's Russia or China or Iran or the North Koreans who want to get their hands on this kind of information. Classified information needs to stay in the right places. Secretary Clinton, when she was here at the State Department, did not do that.
The president has the authority to declassify anything he wants. All authority is to him. Could he declassify it and order it released if he wanted to and if he ordered?
Absolutely. We're going to get there. We're going to get this information out so the American people can see it.
And that's an important thing to note. I mean, that is what they're doing. Now, Trump did talk about how he was unhappy with Pompeo. I have a strong feeling that Pompeo was sort of known, like Trump told him in advance. He's like, look, when I talk to the press, I'm going to put you under the bus a little bit. And I think Mike Pompeo gets the game. And I don't think he was necessarily fighting that. But at the same time, it was that pressure from Trump that nudged to him like, hey, get the ball rolling. Now, Bill Barr recently came out with a post that said this information wasn't going to come out before the election. Don't believe everything you read. Okay, so there's mixed information. There's a lot of talk on the boards that this is another instance where Q is kind of misleading the press or the deep state that's also watching these boards closely. What I think is actually coming out, and I think this is what the general vibe is from a number of people, is that Q is basically saying, nah, this isn't going to come out until after the election. So the deep state kind of relaxes their guard a little bit. But the reality is this is probably, at least the Hillary email, or at least a bunch of her emails, are going to be declassed and released before the election. Almost a guarantee it'll probably be soon because you need like a week or two before so you can really have a little bit of effect and hopefully try to help shift some of those people that are in the middle, that are on the fence, try to shift them into understanding that there is something larger at work. There has been a conspiracy against the American people for a long time, and there's finally this opportunity to try to take it back. So Mike Pompeo is speaking his words and is doing his part. He's doing his thing. So again, he says all these emails are missing. Nothing's ever really missing. And, again, there's even discussions how Hillary supposedly didn't know that the C stood for classified. It's like, you're the Secretary of State. Like, you should know that, especially considering your husband was the president for 8 years. Like, you should kind of be a little more well-read on what classified is and what classified isn't. And I think a lot of people that understand that her server really was serving a different purpose, and it was, information of the highest bidder. And a lot of people, there was some story that came out a while ago that they were forwarding her emails to particular places, or there was some code on the server that was forwarding it off to China. I mean, there's a lot of, who knows? I don't know. I haven't looked at the server. And so we have to see what comes out. But there's been a lot of information to suggest that Hillary knew exactly what she was doing and did it nefariously, and very well was probably selling information to the highest bidder. And she, again, never thought she'd lose. So a lot is going on around all that. So, well, that was the shortest-lived excitement we've all had to date, and I think a lot of that had to do with basically saying, don't trust this. This is on the boards. A lot of people are like, they're just saying this isn't real information. They're not going to release this before the election, which then upset a lot of people because they wanted to see this come out before the election. So what Q followed up with, which is kind of cool, is wasn't referring to Kansas's statement regarding Clinton's emails. Now, at first, Kansas threw me. I'm like, who the hell's Kansas? It's like, my God, you got all these crazy names, and I go looking it up, and you spend an hour going down a rabbit hole, and I never found anyone named Kansas until I finally realized, oh, Mike Pompeo used to be a representative from Kansas. He's Kansas. Kansas made a comment about, not doing the Clinton emails as quickly as possible. So that's where people got frustrated that nothing's going to come out. Don't believe everything you read. So they're like, what, this thing that Pompeo said is not true? No. It's the fact that Bill Barr said it's not going to come out until after the election. That's probably what he's referencing. And what Pompeo is saying is probably true. So that is kind of what this post is pointing to, I believe. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. 4845, we've got another Hillary Clinton status here. Roger that, Madam Secretary. So let's check out what she's saying. So this goes back to March 4th, 2015. I want the public to see my email. I asked State to release them. They said they will review them for release as soon as possible. Well, apparently ASAP does not have anything to do with within 5 years. Apparently, because we are past 5 years, aren't we? So, yes. And so what Q is saying is, yes, Madam Clinton, we will do that for you. And that is the plan. Now, the other article that they follow up with here, Hillary Clinton said she didn't know what the C markings in emails stood for. Apparently it had to do with confidential, but you would think someone in the State Department should know that, especially when that's what they're in charge of. So again, this is who was responsible for Benghazi. I mean, that's the suspicion, and that's certainly what a lot of the evidence would suggest. So the FBI identified 3 email chains encompassing 8 individual email exchanges to or from Clinton's personal email accounts, which contained at least one paragraph marked C, a marking ostensibly indicating the presence of information classified at the confidential level. Not looking good for Hillary. So Clinton Foundation plus Soros, journalists, directors, Africa, all the stuff going on there with the kids, right? In the gates and all the stuff that's going on down there. You got SA, you got SAPs, you got China, Russia, U1, Hussein, director, Benghazi, MBCIA assets, crimes against humanity, all of this stuff, right? So then all of this stuff was rooting off to this Huma's CC, the Wiener's backup. Like stuff was being forwarded off to different locations. Wiener's laptop might have been something he set up, Wiener, as insurance because he kind of knew that he already had information against him. He'd apparently been to the island, or at least what they found on his laptop was quite disturbing. And certainly they accused Wiener of texting a younger underage girl, which he was doing. So Wiener was all sorts of sliminess, and just with his name, a poor guy was like destined to be a bad guy. I have so many other words that almost came out. That all being said, nothing is ever truly deleted is really the takeaway here. So you got threats, you got blackmail, you got bribes. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was going on these servers, this Clinton Foundation. It was the way they maintained control. It was the way they maintained information. It was the way they tried to maintain any and everything they possibly could. Just double check real quick, make sure we don't got any fresh posts, which I do not see any. We've got a couple other interesting articles that I want to call out, just 3 of them here. We got this guy that ended up shooting an individual in Denver. So 30-year-old Matthew Doloff was booked into Denver jail system on charges of first-degree murder in the shooting of a Patriot Prayer demonstrator in the city's Civic Center. I can't show this video because it has the gunshot in it, and you're just not allowed to do stuff like that. But supposedly the individual that got shot pulled out a pepper spray, and I think in the video, and I've got it paused there, you can see this itty-bitty little puff of yellow. I think, but at the same time the was happening, there was a bam happening at the same time. So it seems that maybe the guy pulled out pepper spray and went to shoot him with pepper spray, probably because they were having some sort of argument, some sort of debate, some sort of whatever. And Doloff pulled out a weapon and fired it and shot the guy in the head. Just done. Dead skis right there. So apparently he was Doloff appears to have been in the service of a 9 News reporter as a private security guard when he apparently fired on this conservative demonstrator. So he was there maybe on the capacity of security, but that means he legally was allowed to carry in public, likely, but it does not give you the right to just willy-nilly shoot people that you disagree with. And oftentimes when these things go to court, someone pulls pepper spray, you're not in imminent danger. That's non-lethal force being brought against you. And for you to respond with lethal force, generally speaking, is frowned upon. So we'll see how this all plays out, but it's not looking good for people that think they can just get away with wanton murder, essentially. That's what this comes down to. I don't agree with what you did. I mean, it's what happened in Portland too, right? Don't agree with this individual. I know he's a Trump supporter. Hey, we found one. You hear them say in the background, and the guy walks right up and shoots him. Not okay. Never okay. Violence is not okay on either side of this equation. Ever. It's not. So, not good. One thing that really caught me, and this is just interesting, is this lady at Washington Post is just going off about Trump, and when the doctors were letting Trump out of the hospital, she decided that any MD who publicly endorses this insanity needs to lose his or her license, period, Rubin declared in one of her several tweets. Congress might want to defund Walter Reed. It is a public health hazard. Now, at first I was like, Jennifer Rubin, is she a doctor? Because, if she's a doctor, that would make sense that she could make those kinds of comments. But as I found out, no, she's not, in fact. She's a lawyer. That's all she was. She was a lawyer, and then she got into all this political commentary crap. So she's not a doctor. So for some reason, she seems to think that she's allowed to have opinions about medical stuff because, she's not a doctor. How does that work? So again, misinformation for that matter, but it's the information warfare. You've got people that hate Trump so bad, that Orange Man bad so bad, that Trump derangement syndrome is so strong in them, that they actually make comments that are absurd. And on top of that, not responsible. She's a lawyer. She knows from the standpoint that making comments like this is not okay. Now, she's allowed to get away with it because she's on the deep state side. She's speaking the deep state narrative. The deep state's not going to attack her. The cancel culture generally doesn't attack the people that are deep state players. Now, any deep state players that start to speak out against the deep state, well, they get canceled very quickly. Certainly the Harry Potter author has found out some of the pains of how that plays out. But again, it's just another example of how they can outwardly lie. You got Biden lying, you've got her lying, you've got all these people lying, Clinton's lying, everybody's lying about what's actually going on. And the second anybody tries to call them out on it, well, they're called all sorts of names. They get slandered, they get slimed, they get everything under the sun. This is information warfare. But as we saw up here, the silent majority is winning. I want us all to go into the elections that are coming up. And if you're going to vote in advance, fine, take your chance. I really highly recommend anybody try to get out there and vote in person. I think that is the best and safest way to make sure your voice is counted, your voice is heard, and your voice is registered. I think that is the best way to do it. If that is not a safe approach for you, there certainly are other avenues that you can pursue. But I think a lot of this mail-by vote stuff is going to be interesting and certainly has a lot more question marks around the process than directly going into a voting booth, pushing your buttons and being done with it and having that vote immediately counted. It's a much, much safer approach. Remember, though, information's out there. Start being diligent. Don't just look to Fox. Don't just look to CNN. Don't look to any of these news agencies as an official source. They're not. They're going to lie to you. Fox is deep state, too. I keep trying to tell people that. I want people to understand, yes, there are some correspondents on Fox that are good, I think, or at least are patriots, but for the majority of them, aren't, especially during the day. The daytime Fox is a joke. So try to keep that in mind. Stay strong. Stay together. Unite, watch your fellow neighbors' backs and make sure they've got yours. Make sure you know who's around you and who you can trust and who you can't. Just really have things assessed because in about 3 weeks' time, things are going to get interesting for a period of time. And so we're going to see how this all plays out, but we need to be prepared. We need to be united as much as we can be. And certainly we need to have each other's backs. It's a super important time for all of us. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.